Do you have a junk drawer of Apple Notes that you're way too lazy to go organize? Or maybe a bunch of meeting notes, or Notion pages, or Obsidian notes? Yeah, it's been me and everyone around me for the past, forever. But it's 2026, we have agents now. So I wanted to show you some simple workflows that can take those unorganized notes and turn them into wikis and visualizations that update themselves. So you can keep lazily taking notes and then pull out new ideas you didn't even know were in there without having to think about it. And yes, if you're an Obsidian head, this one is for you. So to start, here's the system. We're going to take all of our notes just using Markdown files because agents love them. It's also easy to find note-taking apps that let you edit Markdown. I even built my own called Hubble that I'm going to be showing you in a second. You start by just taking all of your notes inside of a raw folder and just whenever something comes to mind, write it down. And then we're going to figure out how we can turn that set of raw ingredients into something a bit more enriched, adding tags automatically, and connecting related ideas based on the content. And then we're going to take those raw ingredients and turn them into organized wikis using a set of agent skills. And then we're going to go a little bit further and talk about HTML visualizations. You may have heard about people on the Claude team doing this. You can do it for your notes too. Now to get those raw ideas down, you can just use any old Markdown editor. This is one that I built called Hubble that gives you kind of an Apple Notes-like experience, but writes to Markdown on the other side. There's also Obsidian and a number of apps you may have heard of to do this sort of thing. And the goal is to just take notes whenever you want to. Give it a nice heading. Then for the content, yes, you can faithfully type everything down, but these days I suggest just using a voice transcription tool, either in voice memos on your phone or using one of these apps on your desktop. You can see right here it's transcribing everything that I'm talking about, and when I let go of the key, it's going to type it all out. In fact, everything that was inside of this note that I took after listening to a podcast about how Ferrari was founded, all of this was written using a voice transcription tool. It even generated all the line breaks and all the punctuations for me. It got the spelling of names right based on context. Voice transcriptions come a very long way. And you also notice it takes zero effort to get ideas down this way. The average typing speed is, below 100 words per minute. But speaking, you can easily get down 200 words per minute or more. So unless you are a stupidly fast typist, voice is the most efficient way to just get ideas down. Now, you don't have to pay a monthly subscription in order to use this. You have been lied to if you think you need to buy Whisperflow or something like that. On-device models have gotten crazy good at transcription. There are a couple tools that I'll recommend for this. One of them is Handy. This is a free and open source tool that I believe is platform agnostic. And you can just install it, and it sets up a local model. I believe it's NVIDIA Parakeet as of the time of this recording. And it's super fast. You just hold a key, you let go, and it transcribes on device. There's also this other app called VoiceInk. This is the one that I use because it also generates paragraph breaks, which I think is a little bit nicer, but it works exactly the same way. It's also open source. They charge a one-time fee of $20 to get updates. You might as well pay it to support the developer, honestly. And you get access to any AI models that you want to. So if you want to plug in custom models, you can do that. I personally use the default. It also looks at your screen to understand what the transcription might be based on context clues, and it doesn't go off your device. It's so cool. So that's voice. The second way I suggest getting ideas down is to get a nice web clipper in your web browser. So this is a tool from Obsidian that you can use. You can see up here I have this app in Chrome. It's called the Obsidian Web Clipper. If you click on this, it will take the contents of whatever web page that you're looking at and turn it into some Markdown that you can save locally. You can save it into Obsidian if that's your note-taking app, but don't worry if you don't use Obsidian. You can just copy as Markdown and then paste it into whatever app you're using. And you can see it also generates a bunch of front matter properties to easily find information later. Like if you're referencing an author, it'll put it in there. It'll generate a little tag here. It'll also copy the source, so if you need to get back to the URL, that'll work. You get rich formatting. It's awesome. And it also works with YouTube transcripts. So look at this. If I click on the Obsidian button up here, you'll notice that it generates the full transcript of the video pulled in straight from YouTube with timestamps for everything. So you seriously don't miss a single detail. And if you're thinking that's too much data, I feel like I should just write down the things that I care about. Our goal here is to get down as much raw material as possible because we're eventually going to feed this into an agent that generates wikis, that generates related ideas. And the more context that you can give it on all of the sources that you're pulling in, the better those outputs are going to be. So I encourage you to use web clippers, use your voice tool, and ramble for 10-20 minutes. Get down as many ideas as you can to get the most out of this. And with that, let's go ahead and transition to phase 2, where we will start generating some metadata across all of our notes. So I'm going to go back to that voice note that I mentioned earlier. And ideally, we could have some more metadata around this. Like, it would be great if I could get the URL to the podcast. It would also be great if I could get some tags, especially tags that I use across a whole note-taking system. Too lazy to come up with that, but ideally I would have one. And also some related links, right? Like if I listen to other business podcasts related to this, it should be linked so I can go follow the paper trail, like clicking into backlinks on Wikipedia. So I generated a skill to do exactly that. It's called Enrich Note inside of here. I will include links in the description if you want to try out these skills. And it's pretty simple. We're just going to ask it to enrich the note by adding those details I mentioned. So I have a tagging system that I'm tracking as Markdown. I had an agent initially generate this tag list from all of the notes, just doing a one-time scan through the content. And from here, I instruct the agent to be reluctant to add new tags to the system, because otherwise the agent constantly invents new tags and you end up with a sprawling system that runs away from you. So do an initial pass, and then take all of those tags and apply them only when they're related to whatever the content is. Some of it is for specific topics. Others are for tracking the medium, like if it's a book, a podcast, or a video. And then pulling in the source using web search to find that podcast if it can, and linking related notes using the wiki link format. And it's pretty easy to ask an agent go off and do this. Because we're tracking all of our notes as Markdown, we don't need any fancy connectors or MCP servers. We can just route to whatever that directory is using our agent of choice. I personally suggest using a low reasoning model for these skills so that it's token efficient, gets done nice and fast. And to start, I'm just going to copy the path to this note, and I'm going to ask the agent to enrich it for me. And we can see here it was very smart. It found a related podcast that I also took notes on recently, and it also did a web search to figure out what the acquired podcast URL was. If I head back over here, boom, now we have some properties. So we have our podcast and business tags up there. It eventually one called luxury. I might tell it that's a little bit excessive. We have the source as well as the URL, so if we want to link into it, we can. And we also have a related note for this other podcast that we listened to about the founding of Walt Disney. Look at that. And as you can see, I ran this process across a whole vault of notes. I believe there's like 100 or so notes inside of here. And all of them have these related links that I can go follow if I want to. Like there was a short story that I read that links over to agent loops and verification apparently. So now I can go look at that note. If you're used to Wikipedia deep dives, this is absolute catnip for you. I personally love it too. Here's another link about Claude. It's really fun to go around this sort of web of connected ideas. But as you can tell, you kind of have to be a nerd to actually click through and look at everything. This is really useful if you're good with like fuzzy finding and then clicking from one to the next to find the related ideas. But it's a little more useful if we can get a bird's eye view across all of these notes to understand where to start, really. And with that, we can move on to the next phase in our journey, which is generating wikis. So this is the idea that you can choose a topic that you're most interested in. For example, if you're researching AI hardware, you could point an agent at it and say, generate a wiki around AI hardware. And the system I like to use is generate a map of all of the people that are involved, all the concepts, all of the source material, and then an index page so I can click into there and explore it. To have an agent generate this, it's as simple as taking this GitHub gist from Andrej Karpathy and saying, I want a wiki like this guy's, but for whatever topic that I care about. So if you want to grab a link to this gist, paste it in your agent of choice and get a wiki. And here are a few of the wiki pages that I've generated. One of them is pretty predictable, the latest in AI. I take all sorts of notes around that. So it generated an index page for me. And you can see all sorts of sources related to different topics that I'm researching. One of them was for a side project. One of them's around all the voice transcription tools, including the ones that I told you about. Took notes on that in there. One is about Claude Code specifically. One of them is about a certain content creator that uses Obsidian more. One of them is about AI handoff strategy, all sorts of things that we can pull out here. We also get some related concepts and some people that we take notes on. So there are some expected players inside of here. There's also some unexpected ones, like Adam Neely. He's a jazz musician that I listen to who's talking about how AI is influencing the music industry. And then we have organization, since that was relevant to this topic. And you can click through and find out more for all of these. So it already took notes for me on who this guy is, which is awesome. And we can see all of the related ideas that this person has talked about. So I can click in and look at agent loops, for example. And you can take this all sorts of directions. Like if you're in enterprise and you're generating sales leads and you need to remember all of the people and all of the calls that you have taken, well, this is going to generate a very useful index for you without you having to lift a finger. That's great. It's also good for side interest as well. I've personally been listening to the Bible in a Year podcast, actually, but I generated a wiki page just for that and any spare notes that I've taken. And this has been useful for me because if anyone's read sort of older literature, you know that some of the names can blend together. Same goes for researchers that you might run into or take notes on. So it's very useful to get an index of all of that with the correct spellings and background on each of those people. And here it generated some bespoke concepts that were specific to everything that I wrote down. So we have concepts. We also have all of our sources linked up here. And if we click through at the end, we also get our related notes. So again, we're connecting related ideas. But now these are summaries of those notes that we were taking earlier. So they're much easier to read and digest. Now, this is cool, but you probably don't want to manually create these wikis every time you want to go look at them. It would be more useful if, as we take notes inside of that raw directory that we were talking about earlier, it just magically enriches for us while we sleep. Just have an agent wake up, enrich, and tag everything. And then have another agent come along and update whatever wikis are relevant to those topics. So every time you go look at that wiki, it's fresh. And as you can imagine, that's where we bring in some AI automations. There are all sorts of services that you can use to do this. Some of them, like the Codex app, just run on your machine. So you have to have your laptop cracked open. So every time the agent wants to do something, there's some CPU so we can wake up and do that. But there are also cloud runners. And that's what I recommend personally. So you don't have to think about whether a computer's running. It just wakes up and does the work. And it's pretty simple to set this up. So if you want to set up a cloud sandbox, these are the basic ingredients that you're probably going to need. So you're going to need some sort of container that'll be able to copy this full data set that's on your computer into a separate sandbox. So you will need some sort of like file syncing service in order to make a cloud runner happen. I personally use Obsidian to sync all the markdown to a remote folder. And they have a CLI to make it easy for an agent to pull things down. It's called OB, or Headless Obsidian if you go Google it. And it gives you a single command called sync that will sync down whatever markdown is inside of the cloud into a local sandbox. So then the agent has access to all the markdown, it can iterate over it, and you can run all of those skills. Like we can ask it to run enrich note for us across all of the notes that have not been enriched yet. Or have it refresh the wikis for whatever topic that we're interested in. And then when it's done working, just have it run sync again to push everything back up, and you're good to go. Now, one thing I'll mention is that Obsidian Sync is a paid service. It's $4 a month. It's nothing crazy. If you want to, you can also just use Git for this sort of thing. So you could clone down all of your notes from a GitHub repository and then push them up at the end. This, of course, requires you to track all of your notes in Git, which in my experience is just more of a hassle than it's worth, but it is free. And if you're a developer, you're probably used to using Git anyways. I'm just going to suggest Obsidian for this because you don't have to think about pushing and pulling. It's just a sync service that runs in the background. And here are some automations that I set up. This is using a cloud platform called Oz from the Warp team. And it's fairly simple. You can set up a Docker container with all the environments. This one just sets up a Docker container with the Obsidian CLI inside of it, and also JavaScript because that's required to get the CLI to work. And then I include some instructions so that when an agent wakes up inside of this container, it knows what to do. So here it's telling me that Docker is going to clone everything into this folder. You can run Obsidian Sync, and here's some config to make sure other files get gobbled up inside of there. It tells it where the wikis are, and then it gives some instructions on how to update it. Honestly, this was agent generated and could be shorter, but it does work for me in practice. The only goal is to sync it down, update the wiki, and push it back up. I did another one over here for enriching notes as well. This one is backed by a skill that you can go find. And it just loops over all the notes, looking for this special front matter property to make sure that it's not enriching something that was already enriched. It basically stamps it and says, I already did this in the past. So the next time the agent wakes up, it remembers, oh, I don't need to touch that. Another agent did it for me. And then at the end, it syncs everything back up. And we can look at one of the runs for that inside of here. Oz gives you a little preview in your browser. This is literally the warp terminal inside the browser. Kind of nuts. It ran the skill for us, and we can see everything that it did when it woke up. So here it's editing some files. It enriched some talk resources that were untagged. It also found some of those notes earlier. Yes, I reverted them so I could demo for you. You get it. It found everything that was unenriched, and then it pushed it back up. And down here we can see the cadence. I set it up to run every day. You can also do it every week if you want to conserve tokens a bit. I also included an auth token so that everything just authenticates and works. And then on the other side, you can wake up and look at your recent notes and see that they're all nice and beautifully tagged. You can look at your wiki and know that it is perfect and up to date. You don't even have to think about it. You just dump a bunch of raw voice notes inside of here and you get beautiful wikis on the other side. Now, the last thing I want to talk about are visualizations, because everything that I've shown you has been text-based, which is fine. It's easy to follow a bunch of links down a rabbit hole to look at related people and sources. But what if we want to get a little bit more creative? What if we want to build full interactive apps around all of our notes? Well, that's easy to do because if you have agents at your disposal, you can also write some code. So I'm going to show you how you might generate a visualization using HTML. So here's some examples that I've put together and started using. The first one is maybe you want to generate a burn down chart. You know how on GitHub you can see all of your commits? What if you could do that for notes just to keep up a daily streak or something like that? So I had an agent generate one of those as HTML. And we can see that burn down chart right here. This gives us an in-app HTML viewer. So we can look at this burn down chart of everything that we've done. And through making this, I realized I am very inconsistent with when I write things down. I had a strong start, for sure, so this was definitely helpful for me to see, maybe I need to pick up my habits a little bit more. Now, the other thing I wanted to build was a graph view. If you use Obsidian, you know about graph views connecting all of the nodes like neurons in a brain or something like that. Well, I wanted one of those too, but I wanted to get a little bit creative and just make it look like outer space. Because why not? We have agents. We can do whatever we want. So the first take of this was this thought constellation right here. And this has actually been way more useful than I expected to see the clusters of everything that I take notes on and where I probably need to write more down. So we can see AI and engineering over here. We can also see some hotspots on related ideas. So there was this one about Andrew Wilkinson and some of the notes that he gave about Claude Code. We also see some other related Claude Code observations clustered inside of there. And clicking in, we can see all the related nodes and ideas and just click through them. How cool is that? And we also see some related notes up here for scripture. And over here, just for stray thoughts. I am a very scattered person, apparently. We also see books and reading for all the books that I read, products and startups. You can ask the agent to change this however you want, of course. And I also went a little bit further and said, what if it was in space? Well, look at this. Now we're in space. We also get some nicer highlights to really tell as we're stepping through here. We can see, oh, there's that connected idea. Then we click on this guy. Oh, there's that connected idea. Again, you're no longer constrained by the Notion or Obsidian or whatever other apps you've been using up until this point. Get creative. Ask agents, what are interesting ways that I can visualize all the stuff that I'm writing down? I'm sure you'll come out with something on the other side. If there's any homework I have for you, just take the notes you have and put them into Markdown. You can ask coding agents how to do this. And then you can use the skills I showed off, enrich notes, wikis, or go crazy coming up with visualization. Just ask Claude Code, generate an HTML file for me. And if you want to try that note-taking app I was showing you, it's called Hubble. I built it in my garage. It's free and open source, and it works on any platform. With that, like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video.